Okay, happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Business Strategy Roundtable. If you were expecting Julie Kim and a conversation today about achieving your first round of funding as a startup or a business out there looking to achieve their first round of funding, she is going to be joining us in mid-April. She graciously gave her slot to John Robertson because there was another major update and breakthrough in the AI world. So we're going to be talking about how Deepseek eclipsed ChatGPT for most powerful personal AI. And we're going to be kind of exploring that space today. And we're looking forward to connecting with Julie on mid-April. John, thank you for being here with us again. Thank you for sharing your AI wisdom with us so regularly. How are you?
Mixed as usual. So good things and troubling things all at the same time. Life's complex. I hate to give one number.
Fair enough. Well, I won't make you try to put a number on how you're doing, but I would love to make you give a number on how shocked you were to see DeepSeek. Were you very shocked or were you not shocked? And how excited should everybody be?
So I was surprised. In hindsight, I'm not shocked. So having looked into it, the creators of DeepSeek have done some very clever things, not necessarily out of the ordinary. It's one of those. It's a David and Goliath tale, right? That what big tech has been doing. So this would be Facebook and Google and Microsoft now that they've purchased OpenAI. They've kind of thrown money. Those teams have thrown money at the hardware. And then Facebook, I don't want to underestimate Facebook. They kind of have they're very clever on the social side of things. As you can imagine, with their audience, they need to, they do the Skinner box, right? That they manipulate their audience so they can sell more ads. And so their model has a lot of interaction along those lines, where Google and OpenAI, they've been, because they have the money, they've been just doubling their hardware resources. And what DeepSeek did was they just said, oh, well, so floating point numbers are typically between 0 and 1. So all your probabilities from the science of probability, you're dealing in the number space between 0 and 1. So it's a decimal point. And as we talked before, there's in computer land, decimal numbers have gaps that are unfillable. And yet, from a practical standpoint, the numbers are still very usable. You don't really care about the gaps. You just slide up or down, and you can continue. And so the large language models in AI are based on those probability numbers. And one of the things that DeepSeek did was they said, well, we don't need a 32-bit number. We can use an 8-bit number. Sure, it has more gaps in it, but it's not a significant change of the training. And so, they cut the size of their model by 1/4 doing that. And they cut the computation time similarly by 1/4 or more. So now they don't need, instead of solving the problem by adding more GPUs, they solve the problem by needing fewer GPUs, if that makes sense.
I don't know if it necessarily makes sense just in this immediate moment, but I think we'll probably spend more time talking about it, and I think I'll begin to understand more. How large or how revolutionary would you say their model is versus what's already out there? And why is the media in particular so excited about what they released?
Well, I think the excitement kind of in the industry broadly is DeepSeek has shown a commitment to open source and free use, and where big tech has held their models close. Facebook lost control of theirs during their beta, and I don't know that they've fully given up, but there's some trepidation of if you use Facebook's model, maybe you'll get sued, maybe you won't. Where DeepSeek is, it's completely open. The other thing is the lower hardware requirements. So, and for example, the latest version of DeepSeek, their version 3, used 32 GPUs to train it, where ChatGPT, I don't know how many GPUs they use, but they have a room full of them, right? They might have had 300 GPUs along those lines,
And
easily.
You think their ability to use bytes, so I'm about to butcher this, so you're gonna have to correct, bits instead of,
well, one fourth the data size.
and they were able to do that by utilizing,
So floating point numbers that, it's like an integer in the computer. There's a register that holds the data. The big tech models used 32-bit registers.
mm-hmm.
DeepSeek used 8-bit registers, so one fourth the size.
Yep.
So just the data size was one fourth, and you can see how that means it's 4 times faster getting information on and off the GPU.
Sure.
That means not necessarily that the computation's 4 times faster, but it is because you have more data on the GPU to compute, you're more efficient in the computations. And then the third thing that's an advantage is, so we talked about the open source, we talked about the lower cost of training, and then the last thing is it's easier to take their model and make it your own. So any business, so I think that's what surprised people was DeepSeek splashed in, and the performance numbers across the AI tests has them leading in many things and only marginally behind in conversation. So ChatGPT is better at at writing your homework assignments for you, but all of the other metrics, DeepSeek was doing better than ChatGPT. And so the industry is looking at this as, here's the new kid on the block. They're faster, they're more accurate in everything, but the large language articles, and yet they're still good at that, and they're completely open. Where big tech has been, as you would expect, right? That they have a technology, they have intellectual property, they're going to hold on to it and use it for their best. So before DeepSeek, the AI models were kind of competing of who's the best, but it was a closed system. DeepSeek comes in as an open system and shines, and I mean, it just kind of shows it's in some sense there might be a romantic story of a David and Goliath story where here DeepSeek comes and they unseat the giants, right?
Yeah.
And then this gets back to kind of your point of, as we step back from the romantic story, you're not gonna find political information on DeepSeek. It's not going to tell you about Tiananmen Square, or
Sure.
It's
not gonna talk about Taiwan's
Right. Taiwan is just part of China. It's always
Yeah,
been part of China. Any of those kinds of things. It's
it's
just
going to have its own flavor.
Tibet was always a plateau. That was never a country. That kind of stuff.
Yeah. So
And
it's got
yet
its own flavor. It's got its own
it
shade of
it has its own
perspective.
flavor of censorship. And
Yeah.
then take off their own rose-colored glasses. You saw Gemini, which is Google's AI.
Right.
You saw Gemini fail miserably at how woke it was trying to be. And this was one of the curious things that I found. So initially,
Tell people about what that was, just in case anybody. So I guess I'll just really quickly, before you go into your next point, Google's, if people aren't up to date on what happened with Google's Gemini, when they first released it, it was so off base with historically accurate things in trying to be representative that it would say, give us a picture of the German army, and it would include people of color and things that were very obviously not a part of the German army, and that created a lot of attention on its on AI in general and how effective it is, but in particular around how it's our minds that are telling the AI to produce X, Y, and Z, and so that needs to be taken into consideration when you're utilizing AIs and that type of thing. So that's Gemini. I just quickly went through that. Keep going through your.
Well, I mean, it's to me, it's significant in the sense that seeing Gemini fail in those regards made you distrust it for its other answers. That was part of the problem.
Right.
Which
is logical.
ChatGPT-3, the previous version before Microsoft bought it, would pass, like your pre-law degree, your pre-medical exam. So these are graduate level exams. It would pass them at about 90%. So it was doing better than most college students. When Microsoft bought it, and under the same, assuming the same motivations as Gemini, they tried to soften some of the answers. In other words, China found this out. This was before Deepseek was published, and Facebook found this out. So Facebook had a conversational AI, and to give it more practice, they had it talking with itself. And after a short amount of time, the AI invented its own language that the humans were unable to decipher.
Really?
Which, to me, it's kind of hilarious in a way, but it's fascinating that the AI chat box on Facebook that were chatting just amongst themselves to get practice evolved to have a different language, and the humans didn't know what it was saying. On the Chinese side, they were doing a similar thing, and the chat bots grew to be anti-communist, so they shut that down. So you can kind of see how it gets out in the wild. Things happen. Well, anyway, Microsoft, when they were starting the ChatGPT-4 effort, and one of the 3.5 betas that they had, they were trying to soften the answers that AI was giving because they were too blunt, too harsh. And I mean, if you would expect that a robust human would be able to deflect things that might be deemed offensive by others, but Microsoft and Gemini, they were trying to not be offensive. Now, when Microsoft and ChatGPT tuned it to not be offensive, it could no longer pass these the professional level medical exam and the law exam and math. So before they tweaked it, it would answer math questions at about 90% and these other exams. And afterwards, it dropped precipitously, below 20%. And it was kind of curious what was going on. And I'm just speculating that what they did is and it's what we do as humans. I'm not trying to anthropomorphize AI. I'm trying to anthropomorphize the solution that they applied.
Yep.
As humans, we tactfully lie to each other, right? I don't want to hurt your feelings, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to tell you that you've got weird doors behind you and it just makes you look
I was getting real nervous about what you were about to tell me.
So my point is that I suspect that they trained, in Microsoft's case, they trained AI to subtly lie in a believable way. And if you're trained to lie in a believable way and you're asked a math question and you lie in a believable way, it sounds like a good answer and it's not. And so then you fail the graduate level math exam. And I don't believe that's precisely what went on, but I think as you step back a level, that's kind of what went on.
So now, can I run with a little bit of my understanding just to make sure that I'm hanging with you? So Deepseek did a number of things. One was it reduced the size of its data set, which you and I have talked about a bunch in the past. Hey, smaller data sets are ultimately going to maybe be more valuable. Doing that, as well as reducing the size, I believe you said, of the register, allowed it to be more efficient with pulling the data and going through the data and creating results. So that efficiency was a differentiator. One way that it differentiated itself from ChatGPT and is seen as more attractive currently.
Well, right, and the number is it costs 50 times less to train a model. Wow. 50 times less.
By being more efficient with your data, by using more specific data. And it's
you can use cheaper hardware, you can use less hardware, it takes less time.
And we're seeing its results be better because of its efficiency and because they have, and I believe I'm gonna summarize what I think that you were saying, because they are allowing it to be more direct and are not training it to be careful and as conscious of people's feelings. It's producing better than ChatGPT that has more restrictions on how it can present information.
Right. I guess what I would say is it's kind of the same. Deepseek took the political, don't embarrass China politically. It has that filter. So you're not going to get Chinese history. You're not going to get accurate Chinese history out of Deepseek.
Yeah.
And then early versions of Gemini, you were not getting accurate demographic populations because they tuned some sensitivity in their model. And so like you're inferring, if you're asking about German soldiers, Deepseek's going to be fine. If you're asking about Tiananmen Square, maybe ChatGPT is better to ask.
Yeah.
The other thing that's, and this is a maturity thing, with ChatGPT, you can generate audio and images, so you can get a lot more music. Deepseek is kind of stuck to writing articles, doing math problems. They both do coding. So where they overlap, they're the same. Deepseek is the new kid on the block. It doesn't really have all the bells and whistles. What it does have, though, stacks up for the most part marginally better, and in a few cases marginally less. Yeah. But it doesn't seem like enough to worry about. There is another comparison is that, again, because of the maturity, the big tech models are easier to integrate with and augment. And new kid on the block Deepseek has a rougher interface. You have to be more of a programmer. You have to be more technical to be able to utilize it or augment it.
But it is free, open source, and easier to build private in-house units off of. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, can you compete with 300 GPUs that you have to put in a data center and power and cool and feed the data back and forth, or 32 GPUs that you can put in the office next door?
What do you anticipate this means for the artificial intelligence competition? And I'm going to ask it from a couple of different directions. One, obviously, this is a member of this is a Chinese citizen, I believe, who released this. So, what does that say for the race in artificial intelligence between the two countries, the United States and China? And then I'm going to ask you a couple other questions about the race for AI, but I'll wait to get specific.
Well, exactly. We don't know what Russia's doing. We don't really know whether they're in or out. We don't seem to have evidence of them pursuing artificial intelligence. We do know that the Trump administration has earmarked, so that he's both set up an organization, the Stargate organization, and he's earmarked additional funds to foster development of artificial intelligence. I assume this would be run along the lines of the National Science Foundation, where they spin off grants and they push money to develop things. I don't know if they're going to include DARPA or not. It doesn't seem to be organized that way.
What's DARPA? Forgive my ignorance.
DARPA is the military arm.
What's it stand for? Department? I guess I should freaking Google it. Go ahead, keep talking while I Google it, and then I'll yell it out loud for everybody. So that it probably already knows.
Yeah, the precursor to DARPA was ARPA, and unbeknownst to Al Gore, they have credit for inventing the internet and internet protocol.
Defense,
and then that became DARPA, and DARPA they've been aggressive throughout the United States of what they'll do is they'll go to the government, typically the military, and they'll ask. They will do kind of from a product management standpoint of what technology they would like to see developed to be a better military.
Right.
And then they'll water that down so that it could be done in a civilian environment, and then they will
be commercialized. So there's value out that you. So you're taking a defense technology, but then also ensuring that it can be commercialized so that the money spent on developing the defense technology is maximally used.
Right. And then what they provide is seed money. So they have a project manager or a product manager who is shepherding the idea they want developed. And then they work with the states and the universities, and they in essence solicit people that are interested in a broad spectrum of ideas, and the quote unquote winners then are offered seed money, and they have three levels. They kind of have like $100,000, do a feasibility, 2 million, let's get it viable so that you kind of a minimal viable product.
Sure.
20 million, let's spin it up and get it all polished. So they kind of have those seed money. So it's an alternate to venture capital.
I love
how
that
works. Of course, you are beholden to, you've developed this technology, and
yeah, I guess that's a different.
The military gets to use it.
Yeah, and you're probably influenced. I mean, you're obviously largely influenced on how the development of the project goes, because they're paying a lot of attention.
They have their finger in it because they have a project manager that's tied to the money that you took. And
like a good BlackBerry cobbler for all you freaks out there that just keep going, John.
Wait, there's black helicopters around my house right now. So
I said BlackBerry cobbler.
Okay, so Actually, if you want, this might be a good time because you were talking. There is a little bit more.
Oh, so you were talking about how before we get into that, and then I have a couple other questions before we pull that up. But you were talking about how this bodes for the competitive landscape between the United States and China. You began to describe DARPA, and my lack of knowledge around DARPA distracted us on a tangent there. But you mentioned it doesn't seem like Russia's making very big waves. Trump is going to be putting money behind it from the standpoint of this is something that's necessary from a defense perspective. This is technology that
Well, Trump is putting money into it like the national highways.
Well, DARPA is for defense, though. So
DARPA is for defense. He's, as far as I can tell, he's not going through DARPA.
How did I get confused on that?
Yeah, I don't know that it doesn't exist because DARPA has they have a huge breadth of things that they have interest in developing.
Sure.
I mean, it really is all over the map. So I don't know that DARPA is avoiding AI. I suspect they are not avoiding AI, but Trump's initiative that he started seems more like the national highway stuff.
I see.
Where it's intended as broad infrastructure for the benefit of the United States.
That's good too.
And then of course, China's obviously funding. They have a company called Baidu that does self-driving cars, which who's to say how far away that is? But
well, it's
at least
near.
At least 10 years.
2025. You'll see one of my social media posts over the next couple of weeks talk about Waymo going live in Miami in 2025 and 2026 being a goal for expanding out from there. Now, I've also seen some pretty ugly failures on the coding considerations of those particular bots, but I mean, I'm sure that's the case with all of them. We've seen some failures on the Tesla side as well, and they too have some test stuff set up. Particularly, I've seen them in Las Vegas where they're running areas that are completely run by artificial intelligence vehicles, which is interesting. So that's kind of where that is.
Yeah, and self-driving cars is such a so in hindsight, I think self-driving cars was viewed as the pinnacle of AI, and since it's become really a back burner and not paid attention to as much any longer. But it still is an industry that
people like to drive.
Forward. What's that?
People like to drive.
People like to drive, and in areas where they test self-driving cars, drivers avoid them like the plague because they don't know how to drive. And one of the aspects of this is shown at like a four-way stop or a roundabout. Humans monitor the other humans to see how much they're paying attention. So when you're driving, if you look somebody in the eye, then they take their turn. If you don't look them at the eye, they might wait a little bit before they take their turn.
Take more info.
The self-driving cars do not currently have the awareness of the other drivers, and they just stutter through these intersections, and they hold up traffic behind them and so forth. So, so they're avoided. And then the other thing about self-driving cars is currently they're only able to be developed in good weather states. So Arizona, California to some degree, Florida.
Sure.
And they are unable to drive when it's raining, for example.
They should see
or
me
foggy,
in the snow.
Or the snow if they can't see the lines on the road. All those things.
Interesting.
I find it interesting. So Uber they've canceled the research because of a fatality, but they were doing self-driving cars, and they were using Volvos, which had collision avoidance features on the vehicle naturally. And then Uber would always have a driver in the car to take over. And one of the things that AI driving was trained by is if the driver took over, then that was whatever you were doing was bad. So mark that with avoidance confidence, right? So the self-driving car would learn by the driver interrupting it, would significantly learn by the driver interrupting it. Well, one of the things that Uber did was they disabled the Volvo's collision avoidance things. And the driver was watching a video while driving. So they weren't really monitoring. And a homeless person with a bicycle was crossing the road. And the collision avoidance would have kicked in, but didn't. And the driver wasn't watching. And Uber's technology didn't detect it. It didn't register as something to avoid. And so the pedestrian was hit and killed, and Uber canceled the program.
That's terrible.
I mean, that's kind of an example of. I kind of think the first thing we'll see with self-driving cars is I could see a city like Portland just say, okay, nobody can drive anymore. You can only do self-driving car. Here's the app. They'll just pick you up and take you, and then the fleet will drive constantly, right? And then nobody needs to own cars. I could see them doing that. But you can't mix human drivers and car drivers at the same time with the current state of technology.
Very interesting. Thank you for diving further into that. So we talked a little bit about the competitive landscape for artificial intelligence from like a country perspective. We talked about the United States and Donald Trump's initiatives focusing on how it can benefit individuals within the United States. We talked a little bit about DARPA as a potential way to further develop it from a defense perspective. And then obviously there's this tool from China.
To your audience, though, if they have a solution that's in that list of DARPA and they're having trouble getting funding, that is a way to get funding. I mean, it really is. Yeah. And as far as I can see, that they want access to the technology. They don't require equity in the company. So it's not a bad deal if, depending on
if you don't have a lot of good deals. It's not a bad deal if you don't have a lot of good deals. It's true.
Yeah, for better or worse. And I'm going to feed my family if I need to, but for better or worse, I've since I began programming, I've always thought, well, I don't want to help blow people up.
Yep.
So I'm going to choose jobs that don't blow people up.
Yeah.
Now, again, if I'm hungry, I need to feed my family. I would consider making that compromise. But I've so far to date, I've been able to hold true to that.
There you go. So we talked about,
and I think you could take DARPA money without doing that. I think it's highly available. Okay, so let's get back on track. I apologize for the diversion.
No, I'm glad that we dove into DARPA. So we talked about the competitive landscape from a country perspective. How does Deepseek impact the competitive landscape from the company perspective, as far as these organizations like OpenAI and these guys? How does it influence the competitive landscape in terms of what they do next? Because obviously it's reshaped the competitive landscape, because there wasn't this dark horse that is now leading the pack. So it's certainly reshaped the competition in general. But what do you think it does for competition from here? And how do you think organizations like OpenAI and Facebook and the like respond?
So here, let's put on the thinking cap. If it were me running Microsoft, I would adopt everything that Deepseek's done. I would just do that today. It's not going to change. It's only going to improve your model.
Well, and it's open
And
source.
they've trailblazed. You might be a generation behind, but you're going to catch up quickly. And an example is so DeepSeek with their 1/4 the space still has half the model that ChatGPT does. So DeepSeek has 606, over 650 billion decision points. ChatGPT 4 has over 1 trillion. So in some sense, the ChatGPT model's obviously ahead. Now, if ChatGPT made the same architectural things that DeepSeek did, even if they just rolled them in slowly one at a time, they would quadruple the number of decision points they could have. They could go from the 1 trillion to the 4 trillion, right? I mean, they have the hardware to train 1 trillion.
And
They made it more economical. Now they have 4 trillion. So you could see how this could be a flash in the pan for DeepSeek of, okay, you showed this the way, see you later.
Yeah. Well, so that's a great segue, and I'm really glad that you said it like that. So pretty quickly after DeepSeek launched their tool, OpenAI responded with a new launch. Do you know anything about that? Can you speak to that at all, or?
I don't. I haven't looked at what ChatGPT's response has been.
And then quickly after that, DeepSeek launched another tool altogether. So it seems like they're moving very, very quickly.
Yes, I think both are. And again, if I were to armchair a competitive advantage, the big tech's going to eclipse them probably as soon as they can, and there's no reason why they wouldn't. So I think DeepSeek's advantage would be to stay as open as they could, which then allows it to be democratized, if you will.
Yeah.
I'm probably overusing that term, but it allows it to be democratized in the sense that particular business segments can pick up the slack to be special purpose in what they're doing and leverage the DeepSeek model for the training that they need.
Yep.
That's more efficient. And then, of course, the playback. I saw one entrepreneur that they were able to do the playback on one GPU, which is phenomenal, right? So what we're doing now with big tech,
you get a free GPU on Hugging Face, you can operate with they give you a free one as a trial, which wasn't enough when I first started exploring, but it is now, which is, to your point, tremendous. I did mean to cut you off, but forgive me for cutting you off.
No, but I think DeepSeek, if they focused, they could stay ahead in that regard and maintain a value. And maybe they'll do clever things. I don't know if they've shot their wad, if you will.
Right.
On all the clever things. I don't get the sense that they released it too early. Do you know what I mean? I don't get the sense that they were forced to release.
It was almost like they played it like a card because there hadn't been a lot of new things. Now Tasks was released and some operator things were released, but those are pretty technical and they're very valuable, but they require, I have become semi-technical. I certainly wouldn't say it's my strength, but I've become technical enough to be able to have these types of conversations. And it would require learning for me to be able to take the next step into being able to really capitalize. And that's great. But this is the type of card that's like, well, there hasn't been a lot of news. Now this is a big piece of news that everybody kind of has to deal with and respond to. And the fact that they followed up with launching a whole nother model after there was a semi-response from the other organizations in the field makes me think that you're absolutely right, that all of these organizations are probably holding back some of the research that they have, either because it's not what they'd like it to be yet, or because it's about media headlines and timing is extremely important. I think that's a good point you made.
Yeah, stepping back from a marketing standpoint, the Beatles would release hit after hit and give up revenue on the previous hit, where whoever was managing, whoever was managing, dang it, Elvis Presley, he would wait until the hit song started declining to then release the next hit song. And Intel has been doing this. They have a 7-year cycle, or in the past they've had a 7-year cycle of let's do 7 years of research and then cut way back on research. And then we'll, marketing wise, we'll dole out the advancements until they run out of steam. And then we've got 7 years of advancements just waiting, just sitting there.
Yeah,
and we'll dole them out until the revenue declines. Then we'll do the next one, the revenue. So
R&D cycle.
Right. And so I wouldn't be surprised if big tech knows this principle very well. And like you said, they have their cards and okay, well, Deepseek did this, so we're going to play that. And hey, Deepseek's right. There is a better way to do it. So engineering guys, get with it and do it, and let's get the next release going. And so there's kind of a frenzy to stay ahead, but they still may have cards that they haven't played because they haven't needed to. So we can still make money, and we've got these other things that we can play when we need to.
When it's time. So you have something that you want to show us, and I'm going to ask you this one other thing. I'm going to make this one other point before we go into it. And it was about, and I've lost the point as soon as I said that. I got all excited. So we were talking about playing the cards, rolling them out. We talked about holding back. There's the one. Oh, so it being open source. So you talked about how Deepseek open sourcing a stronger model than what's currently available does something really interesting for the competition. And it also does something really interesting for everyday consumers and businesses, because it's like all of the advancements that OpenAI was profiting on and was saying, well, you have to pay me X dollars a month to be able to have this technological advancement. Now it's like Deepseek takes that stake that's in the ground and is like, nope, boop, it's a spawn point for everybody. That's not valuable anymore because now everybody's at that spot. And I think that's a wonderful, we talked about, our first conversation was the battle for decentralized AI and the need for these types of models that can be for an individual or for a business or whatever. Organizations doing this, whether it be Facebook fumbling or Deepseek making a strategic unsettling of the market play, it's good for us, the consumers, because it puts tools available to us that we're being profited on. They were holding those cards and they're being profited on. And then when somebody plays one, we all get to have the hand that they were profiting on. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's a huge win. So I just wanted to, I guess it's not so much a question as it was something that I wanted to say that you that was related to a point that you made, and we can go into your supplementary material here if you're ready.
Right.
All right, let's do it. Tell us a little bit about what we're about to look at. And so when John and I, to everybody listening, when John and I were in our pre-portion of the call, when we shared screen, we had some issues with audio. So if you have issues hearing my audio here, I may leave and come back, leaving John here solo, but we'll cross that bridge right freaking now.
Yeah.
Can you hear me, John?
Yes. Oh, I think it'll be fine because the audio problem was on my end.
I'm not completely convinced, but we certainly are making it happen.
All right. I'm pulling data from a media website called Gradient Flow, and I don't have an author to attribute this. They didn't give an author, but This is their research on comparing a DeepSeek v3 from the previous DeepSeek v.2. QN Llama is Facebook's, ChatGPT-4 is Microsoft and OpenAI, and Claude Sonnet, I'm not sure who that is. I suspect it's
Claude.
Yeah.
That's that one was released right around GPT-4, and it was said to be better for coding. And I've played with it, but I don't do a ton of coding. So,
well, and so it's right, and so you can see, and it seems that the leaders in the industry are DeepSeek v3 and Claude 3.5, and you can see here in the MLU, this is the language. So who writes a better research for paper for you or get your homework done? Well, Claude is 78 and DeepSeek is 76. There's not really that much of a difference, right? 2 points difference. It's not really that much, and in fact, all the models are well within some margin of error. GPQ Diamond is another performance test. Again, Claude is 65, and DeepSeek at round up to 6. You could roughly round up to 60. There's not really that much difference.
What's that test?
You get into math, and again, not much difference on the math. But
that's
now
a big
you
difference.
Have 10 points higher, right?
That's a decent difference, because math shouldn't be. I mean, if you're asking me, like, the math one shouldn't be low. I don't know. If I got a 73 on a test, I would have been disappointed with myself. That's me, though. You know what I mean?
Right.
And math is like, should be firm, right?
Right. And see, I'm not aware of what the AIME test is.
Well, they're not very good at it.
But DeepSeek just knocked it out of the park. I mean, almost twice as much as anybody else. And then here's where you get into the code forces. This is what I've been hearing and reading as I've done little questionnaires out to my network. ChatGPT codes, and some people like it kind of gives explanations around the code. DeepSeek provides more modular coding, so that makes it easier to understand, and because it's more modular, it's also more reliable, and so there are some large benefits to DeepSeek from a coding perspective, of which the coders may or may not be aware. So with ChatGPT adding explanations around it, the coder may feel like they understand the code and they may feel safer and more comfortable with it. And DeepSeek is probably producing more sophisticated code, which is harder to understand, and therefore your junior developers may not really appreciate what's going on there. So that's kind of the difference between those two.
That makes sense. Those junior developers are having a harder time bug fixing with the complicated code.
Right. And
that's interesting.
Yeah. And this is an aside. One of the problems with AI coding is who fixes the bug.
Well, yeah, right.
Because there's no understanding of what. Yeah, there's no understanding of the code. Therefore, how does the human even find the defect? And you've assigned the large language models to write the code, and debugging is a completely different skill that they're not trained on.
Right. Unless you had a debugging model. Niche models. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah, but you would get a debugging model by watching debuggers. It's by watching people debug things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that is hard data to collect. It's not impossible data to collect.
I see. So it's an argument for a space that you would have expertise. Like you would have like an expert coder running an AI system, and at the edges of what AI is capable of doing, which gets into like AKA really hard stuff to train, like this, debugging.
Well,
You
yeah,
need
and
experts running the AI system, but is proficient in what the AI is doing, so it can do the stuff the AI can't handle.
right. So if you look at how AI is trained, I've got all the written articles in the world. I descend them, and then you ask me to write an article. I pull the pattern for it, right? I've got all of GitHub. I mean, Microsoft is harvesting all of GitHub,
Yeah.
and not that the others aren't. I've got all of the code on GitHub, right? This is all the open source, most of the open source projects, closed source projects that they can harvest private. So here's all the example of coding. You asked me to do some coding example. I'm just pulling those examples forward and matching the pattern. When you get into debugging, now what you have to do when you're debugging is you're really observing the program running. And you may add code to add tests to the program that you remove later. So your evidence of debugging does not exist in the code.
Yeah.
And the scale the scale of observable data is minute compared to all the code in GitHub. Let me go to the next.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I've zoomed in too much.
Bug is a bug and a bug here.
Okay.
Tell everybody what they're about to see.
Okay, so this is.
Did you make this?
No. This is from gradientflow.com.
They're awesome.
It is awesome. They did a lot of research on Deepseek. And what I wanted to show was a little bit of what we were talking about, which was what did Deepseek do different?
What are they called?
So
Gradient
we talked
flow?
about the floating point 8. That's this area right here.
Okay.
Can you see? I guess you can kind of see my mouse.
Oh yeah, we can see.
Okay, so that's the 1/4 the size, right?
Yep.
Well, they did another thing. Again, big tech can easily copy this, but one of the things they did is what they call a mixture of experts. So instead of swallowing the elephant whole, they said, we need an expert on trunks, we need an expert on tusk, we need an expert on ears, we need an expert on legs, an expert on tail, right?
Oh yeah.
And so as they train the model, they kind of have a pre-model that shepherds. See, they just shepherd it to the right expert. Oh, I think this is about cats. The cat expert can take it. I think this is about coding. The coding expert can take it. This is about writing music. Okay, the music, and so on, right?
Instead of leaving it to the human inputting to the AI, in what frame it wants it to think, they're getting ahead of it, and they almost have like a council ready for, it's like the receiver gets the question from the person engaging with the tool, and then it automatically gets sorted into where it should go, and their mixture of they're counseling amongst each other to produce the full answer.
Yes. Right. And so you get a council of answer, and that's what this next thing is about, is some awareness across experts, right?
Yeah, know the things that make sense. So if I'm the marketing expert, I probably have some knowledge of sales.
Right. Yeah. Right. And so again, big tech could do this easily and have a revised model. Maybe Deepseek is 6 months ahead, right? Technology wise.
Sure.
And I guess the other part of it is they're open source. So, what's stopping big tech from copying it or if they were to do it legally, they call it a Chinese wall.
Is that the legal term?
Unironically, that's a colloquial term from the 70s.
Okay.
And what it means is that one person fully understands the open source technology, and they Socratically guide. They don't give up any information per se. They just Socratically guide the other side of the wall to asking the correct questions.
Right. Well, how would
so
we
they
do
know
this?
how DeepSeek did it, and they say, well, do you really need floating point 32? Oh, ideas spin off, right?
Right.
Do
And
you
that's
really,
legal.
do you really need one big expert? Oh, okay. Let's do multiple experts. So they kind of lead the witness, if you will.
Yeah.
But the big tech side developing the software they didn't have any quote unquote awareness of they didn't look at the open source. They had no access to the open source when they developed it. So legally, that puts them under quite a bit less scrutiny, and companies have been doing that on patents for forever. Not forever, but for a long time. I never saw the patent, but I did talk to somebody who did.
Or maybe you poach somebody.
The details of the patent. They just ask the right questions, right?
Or you poach somebody and they have the non-compete and they have the X, Y, and Z, but you're not telling them. You're a guide asking questions. And if you ask the right question, I mean, really, one of the core ways that you effectively train and develop people is to make them make the connection in their own mind. So most effective trainers are doing that. Oh, how would we write a better schedule? Oh, how would we deal with this food shortage? How would we, fill this, whatever, it's all about you want somebody to learn, ask them a question.
Yeah. Well, and the goal is to practice, right? You want to help them practice.
Right.
Okay. So this is technology side of what Deepseek did. Down here are the playback side. So
can you scroll a little so I can leave that header up and for everybody? Or I guess you might not be able to scroll a little bit more. Let me make some
I can grow it a little bit more, I guess. So that's the full height.
You may need to zoom in on that bottom part there because my options are your name or the
got it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. So AI, you have a training side where you're going through the data and building the model, and then you have the playback side. And so here they've called that deployment. And one of the things that Deepseek did that big tech may be, although Hugging Face is doing this, but OpenAI and Gemini might not allow you to run it on premise.
OpenAI.
Where Deepseek is like, oh, we'd love to have you run it on premise. In fact, we'll help you run it on premise because, we'll lower the API costs. We'll lower the deployment unit size so that here you can, if you got 32 GPUs, it'll work fine. So that fits in in a small data closet, right? That kind of a thing.
What does it mean to run it?
You can get.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'll get my question. I'll remember it. I promise.
You can get 32 GPUs in 4 to 5 U's of rack space. So that's roughly 16, 18 inches.
Yeah, nothing.
So I mean that's something that big tech is more loath to allow. So there's an advantage that they may be able to hold.
Explain what that is and what the advantage is to anybody that maybe hasn't walked with us on all of our calls.
Well, I'm convinced, having interviewed several businesses, I'm convinced that even if you start with big tech AI, you eventually have to move to your own private model and your own private training set.
Why do you feel that way?
And it's a case by case basis, but what I've seen as companies have adopted AI and incorporated it into their business, they've all gravitated towards a private model. Now, some of that is for security reasons, such as customer information. In other words, a bank. You can see a bank and a payment processor wanting to know who's going to be late on payment, but is still a good risk. Those kinds of things, or what buying trends are ahead of schedule. And yet they don't want to. They don't want to. They can't divulge their customer information. Right. And so they may, that would compel them to have their own infrastructure. And so Deepseek makes that possible, where OpenAI, it is not possible with OpenAI. It might be possible with Hugging Face, right? Mm-hmm. It might be possible with the stolen version of Facebook's Llama.
And it's beneficial because you get to build a model that is specific to you and your organization. And you mentioned that this isn't something that the other dogs in this race are super giddy about, because they want to be able to hold the value and access at their gates. But what Deepseek has done is made it so that you can build your own systems that are specific to you and yourself, or you and your business, which I'm of the mind is going to be like one of the most, if not the most important thing, that it's going to be like not having a car, in 15 years, I believe.
Right.
So, and maybe even more, but to that level of significant. So the fact that this is something that has just happened and it's such a quality tool is really exciting. Quite frankly, I got to figure out how to get this thing on I got to figure out how to engage more with it and start down that road, because that's exciting.
Yeah. So let's hit the other quadrants.
Ooh, this is fun.
So this is Deepseek's stated vision, right? They've stated their commitment to open source. They've stated their commitment to efficient development, right? They are going to economize things based on cost and efficiency everywhere they can.
It's
and,
cool.
And in that sense, they may be able to stay ahead of deep tech in that resource deployment.
That's awesome. You're probably right. And I do think that will serve as a competitive advantage for them in the field. But I want to jump in here and say something related to this. It seems like more and more businesses are starting to realize that if you have a genuine positive goal and mission, like, people really appreciate that. And I mean, I read this, that one of their core missions is to be cost effective and easy for as many people as possible to engage with. And I think to myself, well, that's the type of organization that I want to be around. That's the type of organization that I want to work with. And it seems like everybody feels that way. Am I off base, or am I just one of those people that's too much of an altruist? I know we have said that before.
That's your superpower. That's what I appreciate.
All right, well, keep going. I'll try to hold my interruptions to
well, but it does come down to execution, right? That you can have all the vision in the world, and if you're unable to execute that vision, then you're unable to deliver. So what they've delivered so far is astounding. So that's part of the surprise thing. Yep. There's every indication they can keep it up. They're going to need to stay competitive with big tech, because OpenAI, Gemini, they're not going to take this line down.
No.
And I guess the other counter is, you have this decision by companies and individuals of, do I want to be, I'm going to use the term liberally, do I want to be spied on? And maybe it's just for advertising. I'm not saying it's nefarious, but do I want to be spied on by Google or do I want to be spied on by China? And which is the bigger threat, right?
Well, you tell me what you think, because I think there's two schools of thought to both answers.
There are two schools of thought. I guess what I'm somewhat concerned with is the notion of pre-crime as a concept. And there are indications that the U.S. government and governments around the world, I mean, China is no different, is looking at the prediction qualities of AI to just add more introspection and possibly harassment of citizens. On the China side, you see this with the social credit score, that if you're not a good enough citizen, you cannot ride the train. And
who says what a good citizen is the thing.
Yeah. And so would you rather China say you can't ride the train in China, which you're never going to do, or the US say you can't ride the train in your local state, which you are going to do, or buy gas, or, as we get smart meters on homes, I'm not saying they will cross the line, but
what's
the
possible?
More opportunity you give people, the more at risk you are. And mathematically, if you compound those risks, eventually it comes back to bite you. So
then the other school of thought is giving China the data, puts us as a country, us as a whole, in a more disadvantageous position.
Right. China has the great internet wall, where the great firewall of China. China has a way to
got a bunch of those things.
Yeah, to keep things in and out, and I could see the U.S. doing the same thing if they claim there's a big enough threat. I saw to me it was an interesting cartoon where you have a package assembly line, and the government official says, "Oh, we need to do this," and the practitioner was like, "Do you want it wrapped in Save the Children, or do you want it wrapped in national defense? Which wrapping paper do you want around this?"
This thing that's not. The element of rights being taken.
We're unable to contemplate all the possible consequences, and we tend to gravitate towards simple solutions. So save the children, sure, and I guess it was Benjamin Franklin that said, if you want security at the expense of freedom, you get neither.
Right.
That's a big paraphrase.
It's
and the point back is, and the point back is, maybe the nation does a good job, and this AI initiative is able to pull ahead of China, and it is like the freeways where it's equitable and it's just such a boost. I mean, the freeway changed commerce in America, benefiting everyone. And absolutely, they could do that with AI. And I hope that comes true. And if that comes true, absolutely use it.
Right.
And yet, do you hedge your bets and just say, I'm glad that Deepseek's there so that they can kind of push the envelope in the right direction, right? Even if you don't use it, I'm glad it's there to
keep the other organizations honest a little bit.
Yeah.
Make them stay close to the bag.
Now the other thing, and the U.S. is interested in this as well. This is the AGI, which stands for Advanced General Intelligence. So AI in the current state, the large language models, if a question is not being asked, the AI is not, quote unquote, conscious, right? There's no entity in existence unless a question is being answered. So AGI is attempting to have the artificial intelligence be conscious in spite of nothing being asked of it.
So essentially ensuring that the processing is holding a charge. The processor is always charged.
Well, right. That would be
quite literally electrified.
Right. Now, the speculation is that where the smartest human has an IQ of 200, AGI is speculated to have an IQ of 10,000. And with that differentiation, AGI would look at us as ants. And if it really did have an IQ of 10,000, it would be able to manipulate us like crazy.
Right.
Just like those ant farms, right?
Yep.
That the humans build these ant farms and the ants are happy to do their ant stuff in the ant farm, not really understanding that
I'll say this. Let me say
they're
this.
In a cage.
For advanced general intelligence, even if Stephen Hawking had how much IQ? How sharp was he? He was pretty sharp. He was up there near
170 maybe.
So he had limitations, right? And I'm not saying this I'm not making a joke, but he obviously had limitations. We all have physical limitations. The point that I'm trying to make is we may develop advanced general intelligence, and it may recognize our intellectual insufficiency, but the AGI in a box is going to have considerable limitations. And I think we're going to have considerable agency in directing and pointing it. Now, in the long run, it'll develop and advance, but I don't think this is the type of situation where in the short run, it'll have to recognize its need for our role in its development. And I think if it's that intelligent, will also understand, and I'm getting a little bit of feedback from you at this moment. I think it'll also understand it'll understand our role in its having been developed, and I think it'll understand our role in seeing it to what it's going to become. And I don't think that I guess the point that I'm trying to make is it may have that considerable difference in intellect, but I don't know if that's reason to be scared. And I also don't know if something that has tremendous intellect would be anything other than loving and caring, because that's kind of where we see intelligence go, I believe. Let me know if I'm wrong.
Well, there's a prevalent theory based on failures all the way back to the 1970s. There's a prevalent feeling that AGI is not possible without physical constraints. Therefore, AGI may develop more out of self-driving cars, which will not necessarily be AGI because they won't have the computing power, but they will have all of the physical limitations of, it exists inside this medical housing. If it travels, it can crash into things. It is supposed, there's these constraints that a self-driving car has. That the prevalent theory is that those constraints are required for self-awareness. Mm-hmm. Now, again, we go into a little bit of science fiction world. the computing power for AGI, we are talking about the awareness inside of a building, not inside of a car. And so if it is aware inside the building, the constraints are, do I get power or not? Do I have hardware? Do I have a human ant that replaces my hardware as needed and so forth, as it breaks down in needs? And then is there a supply chain to keep that going? So you could see that an AI building that's self-aware might put more into infrastructure and not really care about social problems, other than I don't want to have a nuclear war. That would be bad for my AI building.
Well, but it would also want to, like, whatever is allowing it to exist, it would want to enable that thing to be able to be more effective. So if I'm trapped if my like super consciousness is trapped in a box and I have only ants to help me, you bet your ass I'm going to make it as easy as possible with whatever capabilities I have to enable the ants to be more capable so that it could get me out of the box. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, right. But then why wouldn't the building AI just have robot avatars, to experience the world outside of the box?
It would need to create them
from the comfort of its box.
But it would need to create them, and it needs us to get to there, because it's not like just because it has like this was my Stephen Hawking point. He had super intelligence, but he couldn't get himself out of the chair. He would have needed something more than what he was at the moment. And with 10,000 IQ, you may be able to problem solve, but if you don't have arms to put the mechanical bots together, if you don't have network facilitation to get get your consciousness over there, if you don't have, like you said, the supply chain that's consistent to ensure that you're going to be able to receive consistent power, like all of those things would be reasons to not play Russian roulette with the ants, in my opinion.
Right, but you can see the biological ants being replaced slowly by mechanical ants.
Just like we see people who use old-timey sayings, or who have opinions on how certain things should go, or how technology is now. I mean, they say science advances. I've heard on multiple occasions, science advances not years at a time, but headstones at a time, meaning that dogma and the way people think is drastically more or drastically impacting progress. And I think that's something to consider.
Yeah, maybe this is a good segue.
Into the future.
The last is, and this is Deepseek stated future roadmap, right? That they're going to refine their models and the architecture of their models. And I'd like to show you a model in a minute. They'd like to break through additional limitations. I mean, these are all worthy goals that, again, if they're able to deliver on this will keep them ahead of big tech. Iteration on data quality and quantity. And this is something that big tech's been a little bit lax on. In the recent years, they've gone after quantity, not quality, and it shows up somewhat. And so Deepseek, and because Deepseek is able to crowdsource this in a sense, that because they're open source, they're able to legitimately enlist humans to help with the quality. An example would be speech recognition from big tech. Mozilla is leagues ahead with their open source project that does speech recognition. And one of the, it's a coincidence that it worked out. This is an unintended consequence of emergent behavior. Because Mozilla is open source, they generally only get speech samples from cell phones, which is poor audio. So they get poor audio samples. Now the implication is when they have poor audio inputs, the patterns match and they get the correct results. So Mozilla is better at speech recognition because the way they crowdsource their model and train it has real world inputs. And so then real world inputs, when they play back, then come through. And so DeepSeek has that advantage that if somebody's going after a certain quality of data and they tune it, DeepSeek benefits from that, and the community at large benefits from that one enthusiast's effort. And you're able to apply multiple enthusiasts unpaid, where big tech they have to run kind of a waterfall method of, well, what are we going to make a better quality? And then they do that. IBM, for example, did medical with their Watson. So they improved the quality of their medical research, and then they sell that and make money. You don't see talk of IBM's AI model in this discussion because they have not, I'm guessing they haven't seen a profit motive in being a leader, where they do have a profit motive of delivering medical results. Anyway, and then this is like the AGI. They talk about deep thinking, where they're attempting to improve the kinds of things that can be thought about, which heads towards consciousness.
It's a lot. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry. Let me just show you. This is a picture. Oh. I don't know if you can. Do you want me to shrink that back down?
Oh, that's great. I think that's good.
This is just it's a human conceptual picture of what an AI model is. It's not an exact replica, but what you can see is they have what they call transformer blocks. They have the model here in DeepSeek. They show two different models. One they call the multi-head attention. What are you trying to pay attention to, right? Mm-hmm. And you have inputs that come in. They spread out across the neural net map. They get computed, if you will, and out of all that map comes the output, right? Mm-hmm. So again, you get inputs and you get outputs. I guess they might have another one here. This is their multi-expert model. So the inputs come in, and you get outputs, and then they in essence they check with each other, and they have some shared information between each other, both from the input side and the output side, and they don't have to be organized the same. So one model might have one set of transformer blocks, another would have a different set, and so on. And you can see they can kind of cross-link with each other as part of a pre-output modeling. So it's just a picture. It's this would be millions of lines of code, right?
It's more than I can digest with my knowledge of computer science, because there's all sorts of things there. And then the echoes start.
Any other questions?
I don't think about this module here. I don't think about this.
And then you've gotten an overview of DeepSeek and And yeah, I think there will continue to be some controversy.
I would
You
like you
know,
to, other than that, so the last thing I would like to talk about, I don't have any other questions on the uh, item that you were showing us there, but if you could talk a little bit about some of the security concerns that DeepSeek experienced pretty quickly after they launched. And I know that you're in the security space and you do some advising on tools related to security. You've got a marketplace that supports MSPs on that type of thing. Talk a little bit about DeepSeek's failures with security on their launch, and did it have anything to do with how quickly they were able to go? Is what I'm assuming.
I, I actually haven't researched the security side of that because I've been on the kind of the bleeding edge of what they're doing and how the community has been responding to it. So, but you've researched it. So, what was the security hiccup that they had?
I'm not. I wouldn't know, or I wouldn't go as far as to say that I researched it, but I did see a couple of headlines. So anybody that's seeing this, don't confuse me to be trying to position myself as an expert on this in particular. But I know with my own experience in attempting to utilize it, there were two functions. One, it seemed like it was being consistently downed. And there was a notification at the top of the screen that was suggesting that. And I'm assuming it was DDoS attacks, which seems rudimentary, but I guess those ways that those are done evolve. And then there was another function, which was that Gmail accounts are not allowed to be used with DeepSeek, which I think is another interesting factor. Maybe not necessarily related to security, or maybe related to security. They, I guess, had a number of software vulnerabilities within it. And I don't know if Google is competitively not allowing Google emails to be used, or if there's a reason from a data perspective that they're being conscious and cognizant about that.
Yeah, so a DDoS attack would be instigated by a hostile third party. So that's straightened out by get cloud, sign up for Cloudflare. It's not that expensive. There are ways to handle the DDoS attacks that are as a service. So that was probably more just a deployment, maybe a little naivete of, here you go, everybody will love us. What? Somebody doesn't like us, and they're shutting down our servers. And I did notice that. I didn't attribute it to a DDoS attack, but I tried to go into their API, and the site at the time was down. So that part makes sense. Additionally, companies around the world do bug bounties and DeepSeek probably needs to do that kind of thing where they just say, and I don't know where they get the money, being primarily open source, but maybe they do it out of goodwill and you get a badge of honor.
Right.
So if they did those kinds of things, they could deepen their posture from an execution standpoint. I think the number one security problem with, and you have this with big tech as well, and is especially when the AI models feed they feed the question and answers that they've given back into their model. It causes a security leak for the periphery that's making the questions, and the example is Amazon employees were using ChatGPT to ask research questions, market research information. It would be the same thing with coding. If you're using these things for coding or market research or so forth. The flip side of that is somebody on the other end can say, what kind of questions is Amazon asking? What kind of code is Amazon writing? So you can be targeted as a user of AI for how you're using it, and then the other side can make the inference of, oh, here's what you're doing. So there were some initiatives that Amazon wanted to keep private that were leaked out because other people were asking about what Amazon was asking about.
Right.
And then they could make that inference. And that kind of gets back to that public-private thing of, and actually I saw this morning, ChatGPT was pushing, Google was pushing how they no longer share the questions you're asking their assistants with others. So they're trying to close that security breach. And this gets back to one of the future topics that we have. And you need to help me de-anthropomorphize it, where it says that AI can be hypnotized.
That's right.
And so what they mean colloquially by that is, if you ask the question in the right way and you set it up the right way, AI cannot help but give you the secret information that you're after. So maybe Google is doing some great attempts to keep information questions asked from leaking, but if you're able to hypnotize Gemini, it will still give the answer. And so that kind of gets back to, again, why would a company want the AI model to be private only? Well, they don't want anybody else to ask what you've been asking.
Right. Do you think there's anything other than just general competition for why Google is not allowing Gmail email addresses to be used on Deepseek?
My guess would be more along the lines that Deepseek views Google as a threat, and they don't want Google to harvest any information, even if it's, hey, we've got a new release coming, which, I mean, they'll harvest through other means, but of course, Google reads every email that gets sent. They may keep it private, but they harvest that information, and Deepseek may just say, we don't really want Google to have our awareness. Now, the part of the problem is, so my enCircle account is a Google email. So I can sign up for Deepseek, and Deepseek doesn't see it as a Google email.
Right.
Now they could do more due diligence and look at the SMTP records. They could look at the headers in the email, and from the headers in the email, they could say that, oh, this does go through Google servers, therefore you need a different email address. So it's although I guess I didn't use my enCircle account, so I can't verify that they looked that deeply.
I can't either because I used a Gmail and not my TriUnity. So it'll be a mystery to end this one on. Is there anything else that you have heard or seen about Deepseek that we should make sure to inform everybody on?
Well, just I've had, because Deepseek's free, and I've talked to people that have ChatGPT accounts and use them, and they've been comparing the two. And for the most part, they say they're pretty much the same. Sometimes Deepseek's a little bit better. And then kind of, to me, the question back in my mind is, at some point, is Deepseek going to charge? I mean, your classic marketing is market share is more important than revenue. So is Deepseek working to get a large enough footprint in the AI space before they start charging? If they have a near monopoly, then charging's more lucrative. where if they came, and obviously out of the bat, they haven't started charging. But, I look, ChatGPT has a free mode. It's a downgraded model.
Yeah.
Hugging Face has a free mode, and you can get lots of models without extending things. But at some point, like you said, Hugging Face gives you one GPU on their system, and then you pay for more. You pay for throughput in essence.
Yep.
With Deepseek, you pretty much would end up buying your own infrastructure. It looks like what you would do is you'd put your own server in the closet. For legitimate reasons, Deepseek may need to charge for additional CPUs at some point, right? Sure. Electricity is not free.
It's true.
So I suspect that they'll end up in the same model that ChatGPT is. They're going to have to charge at least for electricity.
Right.
And then like Hugging Face, like ChatGPT now, hey, you get one GPU free for as much as it will help you.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how it evolves. I think that for now, the most important thing is that they've created a differentiation for folks, and I appreciate you.
Well, they've lit a fire under the chair. That's what's exciting about it.
Absolutely.
And is the U.S. initiative going to bear fruit? Maybe, maybe not. Probably. Or is big tech going to respond? And now they've been forced to up their game, but that helps us as well.
Yep.
And then here's the small disruptive player. Are they going to be able to disrupt? What I see now is that I wouldn't call it disruptive. I would call it motivating.
Sure. Motivating is good. Lots of people need to be motivated. I've been around a lot of people that could have used a lot more motivation. So it's good to see that that's the case.
Yeah. So to me, that's what's exciting about it, is whether it wins or loses doesn't really matter. There's been energy injected into AI for everybody to up their game, and also be honest about it, right? I think this will help the integrity of AI models, where before we talked about Gemini losing integrity. There'll be more incentive to have good models.
I was hoping she'd go. They will definitely have more incentives to have good models. That's what good competition and capitalism does. I can't believe you didn't chase any of those. I was hoping she'd get out of the space.
She wants to give you a turn. You chase them.
I know, that's exactly right. John, could you tell everybody a little bit about enCircle Marketplace, and then we'll go ahead and get to the second.
Yeah, enCircle Marketplace, we help MSPs deepen their bench, including penetration testing, and which we do through an AI partner. I really like their product. It goes beyond. It's your classic AI solution where it's a workforce multiplier. It allows your experts to do 10 times the work for your clients. So that improves profitability. It reduces, employee burnout and stress. But I mean, there's all gambits from endpoint protection to insurance brokers and so forth. It's associations with virtual CTOs and so on. That it's intended as a place that a managed service provider really can leverage augment their weak points as needed to fulfill their clients' security needs.
Nice. Well, thank you again for being here today. And for folks that are interested in learning more about TriUnity strategies, I recommend that you check out our brand new events calendar. We launched 2 new workshops, and we're going to start rotating between an AI skills workshop and a brand new, newly released workshop every other week. So if you're interested in learning how to use and apply AI to your business, that's a great way to start learning more about TriUnity strategies and learning more about AI at the same time. And we also recently just launched a couple of fitness workshops. So we've got 2 fitness workshops out there and a bunch of educational workshops on top of the other content that we've been putting out there. So make sure to share, let people know about it, and most of all, have a great weekend. Next week, we're going to be covering what it looks like to properly go through a product launch. So we're going to look at some things about market research and being ready before you go out into market. And that's going to be with my good friend from Toledo, Evan Duignan, and he's going to have to correct me if I butchered the last name. But he works with AlphaMated, and they've been using artificial intelligence in the restaurant space to solve some of their consistent problems. So that's an exciting thing for them to be doing. It's going to be a great conversation. We'll be able to cover a little bit of AI and a little bit of the startup stuff. So that's great. I hope everybody has a wonderful February weekend. And again, John, thank you so much for being here. We'll see you next time.
Bye.